But I remember walking out of the room that day thinking, isn't that like it is with us sometimes when we feel strapped down, we feel tied up, we feel in a great deal of pain. We look to our Heavenly Father to come along and rescue us, to untie the chains, unhook the devices, get us the heck out of here and sweep us away. God knows the bigger picture. He knows the bigger plan. He knows that there is sometimes situations in which the places where we find ourselves are, in fact, part of a larger healing plan.
Welcome to the Faithful and True podcast. We're back again today for the second installment of the three-part series on Purpose in the Pain. This legacy podcast features Dr. Mark Laaser as Mark shares his wisdom and guidance on this very important subject. Here now is Dr. Mark Laaser.
Today we are in the middle of what I think is a challenging and hard series. It's basically around the theme that God oftentimes chooses to grow our character, to perfect us, to draw us closer to Him through pain, hardship, trial, trouble, and so forth. And we've covered some scriptures about that in the last couple of weeks. This is our third week in the series. And as I was thinking about this, as I sometimes do before the show, Randy.
It's called pre-production.
It's called pre-production, preparation, that kind of thing. Well, actually, it's a spiritual thing. Debbie and I were doing our morning devotions this morning, and it kind of came up. And the question I want to throw out there today for our listeners isn't a part of this that there are going to be times, are there not, when we're going to pray for something specific. And it's going to seem to us that God is not answering that prayer.
Right.
So that's kind of the theme of this show, that God is not always going to answer our prayers in the ways that we would like Him to.
Well, it seems to me, Mark, the more that we've gotten into this new series, that God planted this series theme on our hearts.
Right.
He just really has. We could never have predicted that you and I would have a number of challenges, physical and otherwise.
Medically.
Medically come into our lives so in such a strong manner as they have. Mine, I'm not shy about. I'm dealing with two conditions. One with a chronically painful lower back, and the other one, a trip to the dermatologist discovered a spot of skin cancer on my scalp.
Right.
And it's funny because along came this idea, and I was instantly on board because I know exactly of what you speak.
Right.
And sometimes we always tend to we turn to prayer and say, Lord, see me through this. Lord, please grant me relief and all those kinds of things. And it's so often, you're right about we're not always on the same time schedule.
We're not always on the same time schedule, and I think one of the things we should bring up in this is that there's times when we get despairing about this. There's times when we get sad about this. There's time when our faith is really challenged by this. And it's exactly at those times that I think we can, through community and so forth, choose to try to draw closer to God.
Right.
And so let's continue to talk about it. I appreciate your being open and honest. The truth is that I'm also dealing with a new medical condition called multiple myeloma. It is very treatable, and my doctors are promising me that they can manage this problem for me for many, many years to come. And yet, in the meantime, I'm I'm in the middle of a lot of treatment, and some of the symptoms of this problem are quite painful physically. In fact, one of the things you and I share is kind of an intense amount of lower back pain at this point. So.
Right.
But I do want the listeners to hear that both of us have a very good prognosis here. We're not going anyplace. We're not.
No, it's very encouraging news, and it's mainly the going through the process, going through us doing what we're supposed to do.
Right.
To help ourselves. We're not just sitting back and saying, Lord, cure me. You have jumped in with both feet and very admirably saying, I'm going to kick this. I'm going to handle this.
Right.
And I think that's probably half the battle, maybe more than half the battle, because you showed no moment's hesitation in saying, okay, Lord, let's see what you've got in store for me.
Exactly.
And the more you've done that, you've come back from your doctor's appointments with with a new batch of very hopeful, positive news with you.
Right.
And I think those that are defeatists, or those that want to find I'll never be the same, I'll never survive this, those people are really in for a struggle, because I think it takes a person of faith really has the upper hand in dealing with challenges.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend just before I came down to tape the show that has conquered lymphoma, and he was talking about the fact that, Mark, even 9 years ago when I got that diagnosis, and the doctors told me then that it was an incurable disease. Well, back maybe 9 years ago, there were some doctors who felt that way, but evidently he was able to find one of the newer treatment protocols, and he's alive and well, and there are no signs in his body of the cancer. But he said something which I thought was remarkable. He said, when I first got the diagnosis, I said, whether I survive or not, I do know where I'm going if I don't survive this.
There's the even better news.
Yeah, so why not just live in victory, one way or the other. I'm either going to live a long life here with the Lord, or I'm going to, go on to eternity. So, I think we have a choice in these things about whether or not to be a victim. I think that's easy to do. I think it's very easy to start feeling sorry for ourselves. Or I think one of the themes of the show is to kind of automatically, or as quick as we possibly can, get the kind of support and prayer and counsel and community around us to basically try to understand what is God teaching us even in these difficult situations.
Very much the theme of Faithful and True.
That's right.
Those that come to us who are suffering, that's the message that they're going to hear here, is that there is hope, there is healing, and we jumpstart the road to recovery and the healing journey on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And it is quite uplifting when you take that mindset. In fact, it makes me eager, not anxious.
Yeah.
That's one of the most misused words that I notice all the time. There's a local sportscaster that always uses the term anxious.
Right.
And anxious means you're worried about the outcome. What the correct word is eager.
Eager for the outcome.
You're eager for the outcome. You are. You feel positive. You feel empowered, and I'm eager to have this back pain remedied and behind me, and back to you and I looking at how soon our first tea time can be this spring.
Well, this spring might be a little optimistic for me, but they are assuring me that I can be back out on the links by maybe this fall.
Did I say spring? I meant this fall. Right, there you go. We'll just shift the timetable.
Well, we may have to shift the whole timetable to Florida, too, by the time we get back out there.
We're willing to go with the flow, that's for sure.
Yeah, okay. Well, back to the idea. Do you not think, though, that when you first arrive at a new problem that you're facing into, isn't our natural inclination to automatically pray right away for God to take this away, God to just heal me of this. So that's kind of what I'd like to start with, and basically not challenge so much as just ask our listeners right now, as they're listening, to maybe even pause the recording. And if you're listening to this with somebody, just have a conversation about some of the significant times in your life when you felt like you prayed for something to be completely different, for God to completely take something away, and He chose not to do it. And how is your response, or what was your response like to that?
It seems to be the natural thing for us to, you and I are sitting here just sharing our current situations, but isn't it true that almost everybody at some time or another is going to go through a challenge like this?
Right.
And sometimes, you mentioned this in passing, but I caught it last week when you said many times it's a physical or medical situation, but sometimes it's an emotional situation.
Yeah, right.
You know, and just knowing that those situations come along, and how do we respond to it? And you're right, the first kind of natural response for me is turning to prayer and just saying that, Lord, please see me through this. Lord, please remedy this problem. And, oftentimes He does.
Sometimes He does.
Sometimes He does, and
Yeah.
I always marvel at that. But when He doesn't, I guess that sends another strong message that there's more going on here than meets the eye.
Well, let's return to that idea in terms of what God knows we can handle. So let's come back to that in a minute. One last thing before we take our break, just again to emphasize to our listeners how much we would appreciate them getting involved in their own thoughtful, prayerful way of thinking about this topic. Before I came down today, I Googled the topic, when God doesn't answer prayer, and Google responses was 1,650,000 hits on the internet of websites, books, and so forth devoted to answering that question. Well, we're going to return to a scripture. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, where Paul is telling us that God knows our limitations. He knows our strengths. He knows our weaknesses. And the Bible teaches us there that He will not allow us to be tempted or challenged or troubled. That's how I interpret it, beyond our ability to withstand it. So if God is in some way allowing for us to go through something, He must know that we have the strength, the resources, the community to get through it. And I think that's something that we need to always fall back on, that if we're being allowed to go through some hardship, it's because God knows that we're capable of dealing with it.
It's like the old adage that God never gives us more than we can handle.
That's exactly it.
And yet at the same time, in our quiet moments of self-reflection, you're going, really? I mean, really, Lord? Are you sure that I'm up for this?
Yeah.
Because there can be moments of kind of despair, or when you're dealing with trying to manage pain, that you're going, I know that you wouldn't give me more than I can handle, but I think we're getting close.
Yeah, we're getting close. So, yeah. Well, there are going to be moments of questions like that, and why are you allowing this? Why did you let me go through this? And we do question all the time. We question the wisdom of God, and I think I did have a story that I wanted to share today.
We love your stories, please. Aaron and I, we're all ears, aren't we, Aaron?
Yes. Yep.
Well, this I hope I'm not going to be embarrassing our youngest son, Ben, who is now, in his early 30s. Some of our listeners will remember Ben. He has now moved on to living in another city and has another job, but he used to be in Aaron's position here. He was the engineer in the show. But an incident happened to Ben early on in his life, and it kind of taught me a lesson, I think, about what we're trying to talk about today. So it takes a minute to set up. when he was roughly about a year and a half, 2 years old, he was in that process where he's got teeth and he's starting to eat different kinds of food. And one day, he, unbeknownst to us, he was eating some peanuts that had been laid out on the counter someplace. I don't think we had given them to him, but he had maybe crawled up someplace and managed to get them. And he was chewing on them, and I don't remember exactly what happened, but I think either his brother or his sister or something came along while he was chewing on these peanuts to frighten him. And when he got frightened, he like we sometimes do when we get frightened, he just took a gasp of air. He inhaled in. And,
partially chewed peanuts.
And he had these partially chewed peanuts in his mouth. And what happened there was that when he inhaled those peanut fragments, they got into his lung, blocked a large part of his right lung. And it was a few hours later when we realized that he was having trouble breathing and all of that, and was just beginning to get kind of blue, actually. And it was probably the scariest sight about a child of mine that I've ever seen. Well, of course, we got him rushed to the hospital, and when they got him to the hospital, they took X-rays, and that was a very difficult picture to look at because his right lung had in fact collapsed, and it was kind of doing some awkward things to his chest cavity. And, there again, by the grace of God, we did pray in that situation for there to be healing. And God did provide it in that situation because there is medical instruments now where doctors with, these little tubes with microscopes on them and stuff can go down your throat and retrieve the peanut fragments. And as soon as they did that, Ben's lung reinflated, and eventually, he was fine.
Got his proper color back and everything.
Yeah, he pinked up and, all of that kind of thing. I'll never forget the doctor coming in after he had performed the procedure, and he had a little jar with all these peanut fragments in it. And so what happened next is kind of where I was going with this story, is that, of course, they're going to have to observe him for a while in what, in fact, was the kind of like the neonatal intensive care unit, although it really wasn't that. It was just kind of an intensive care unit because he was like I said, 2 years old. And so, when I went up there after this procedure, he's laying in a hospital bed. He's still kind of anesthetized, so he's still asleep. And he's strapped down. He's got IVs in both of his arms, and they've got him strapped down so he doesn't inadvertently tear the IVs out of his arm. And they were doing other things, giving him drugs and pounding him on the back to make sure his lungs were clear and stuff like that. And but I was standing by the side of the bed when he woke up, and he opened his eyes, and as soon as he opened his eyes, he looked over, and he saw me standing there, and I saw him trying to lift his arms to me, and in his primitive language abilities yet at that point, he simply said, "Dad," and he wanted me to pick him up.
Sure.
He wanted me to take him out of there,
Right.
He wanted me to unhook the tubes and
he was scared.
Untie the straps, and he was scared as all get out. And there was his father standing there, saying, "Dad, take me out of this situation. I am totally frightened."
Yeah.
Now I'm standing there, knowing that I can't do it,
Right.
Because the doctors and the treatment protocol is that there's there's a few more hours of this that need to happen in order to complete the healing of his lung at that point. And I remember, hugging him as best I could with everything strapped down, and of course Debbie was there too, and we were trying to comfort him and as best we could, and eventually, of course, he did get out of there. And but I remember walking out of the room that day thinking, isn't that like it is with us sometimes when we feel strapped down, we feel tied up, we feel in a great deal of pain. We look to our Heavenly Father to come along and rescue us, to just untie the chains, unhook the devices, get us the heck out of here and sweep us away. I think we even have hymns about carry us home and all this kind of stuff. So and I remember thinking, God at times knows the bigger picture.
Right.
He knows the bigger plan. He knows that there are sometimes situations in which the places where we find ourselves are, in fact, part of a larger healing plan. And at some level, I'm not sure it's always the best analogy there with Ben, but I do know that in the sense that I, as a father, knowing that there was a larger healing plan, could not intervene even in the way that my heart desired to intervene.
Right.
And I remember thinking that I'm guessing that God is like that a lot too. I think that he so often would like to intervene, more so than maybe he allows himself at times to do. But if God is not allowing himself to intervene, it's because there's a higher purpose, there's a higher calling, there's a higher amount of healing that needs to take place.
Well, it's a pretty awesome analogy, because just imagine Ben's perspective of that moment versus your perspective of that moment. Ben is like us when we're going through something in our life now, and your role was like God's going, I could help. I mean, I'd love to help if I could, but I know that there's more healing to take place before I can, free you from these tubes and all of that type of thing. So that was pretty powerful role. You didn't plan it that way, but the analogy is right on. I have a very not similar, but still a parent-child example of that. I had a tumor removed from my left shoulder when I was 6 years old, and it was about a golf ball size. And the good news is it wasn't cancerous, but when they opened the back of my shoulder and removed the tumor, it was connected by a very thin cord of other tumors that went all the way down my spine. It was like a little trail of them. Yeah. So the surgery went perfectly, and I was back in my hospital room and recovering. And in those days, you were anesthetized, you were knocked out using ether. And
you are older, Andy.
I am old. And the after effect of having ether in your system is the only way you get it out is to throw it up. And so following the surgery, my mom was bedside as I was groggy and feeding me ice chips to induce this. Okay. While she was in the midst of doing that, as we've mentioned before, I was raised Catholic. And the priest that was on duty making the calls stopped by my room and saw the situation and blessed me while I was in the bed post-surgery. And I turned to my mom, and as he walked out the door, and I said, I'd had my limited Catholic training by second grade, so I knew just enough to be dangerous. And after he had, blessed me and he walked out of the room, I said, "Am I going to die now, Mom?"
Oh, he thought it was last rites or something.
I thought it was last rites. And my mom said, It took me a while to recover from that.
Yeah, right. I bet.
So
Yeah.
the role of the parents versus the child in both of those cases are...
Well, as maybe we're coming to the end of the show today, I don't think we're going to, give any answers that are going to completely make everybody happy here about why God doesn't always answer prayer. But my reflection turned to the fact that, given the examples that we've used, that how did Jesus feel? I mean, what did he pray in the Garden of Eden? That God would remove this cup, this burden from him, and he of course said, "Not my will, but yours be done." And I think if the Bible teaches us that God, in His divine mercy toward us, did not spare His own Son going through these things, we are called at times as followers of Christ, as he tells us in Matthew chapter 11, that we are going to be asked at times to share in His burdens. And even in that, God is teaching us that we can rely on Him, and that we can, our burdens become lighter when we share them with Christ, who knows exactly what burdens are like.
So even in our most troublesome times, staying true, staying faithful, and staying as close as we attempt to with God will see us through the hardest of these times.
That's right. So, in terms of, our population of people, I preach to the guys all the time that maybe the hardships that they've come through with, all of their acting out and all of their sinful behavior, this is some of the ways that they've coped and wanted to push away, pain as opposed to embracing it. So, one of the ways that we know that we're truly in recovery and truly healing is by allowing ourselves to embrace our pains and allow God to teach us things in them. So,
thank you for joining us today on part 2 of Purpose in the Pain with Dr. Mark Laaser. This legacy podcast that we offer to you is because Mark's messages have always been so powerful. And so we wanted to share that with you. If these podcasts have opened your eyes and you see that you need some help for the struggle that you're having, we invite you to visit faithfulandtrue.com. There you'll find many resources, over 400 of these podcasts, as well as information about our 3-day intensive workshops. The Men's Journey Workshop is offered every month, and we invite you to take a look at the information, the brief video that we offer on the workshop page, and the opportunity to register for one of the many upcoming 3-day events. We also have the information and registration available for the Spouses Women's Journey Workshop and the Couples Journey Workshop. So check those out on our website, faithfulandtrue.com. In the meantime, we hope that this coming week will be a great week for you, a week filled with many blessings and with great vision.